Spoilers for the Pokemon movies ahead. Turn away now unless you've seen all of them or don't fucking care. If either case fits you, it's fucking Wave. Do I need to say anything else? Before we cover the meat and potatoes of this video, I'd like to take a moment to talk about something he mentions in the intro.
When I talk about the generation this movie's in, I will be talking about the star of the film. For example, I will label Destiny Deoxys the Gen 3 movie, even though it has Munchlax in it, and I will label Mystery of Mew the Gen 4 movie, even though it has the Gen 3 cast. Why? Easy. Because the anime is not canon for the most part with these movies.
How does the fact that most of the movies are not canon affect the generation that these movies are in? Plus, it's generally accepted that a movie's generation is based off of where Ash is traveling at the moment and who is accompanying Ash in his travels. However, I can see where you're coming from, so you could consider this a nitpick. The rest of this, not so much. Also, switching avatars, here, something more fitting considering the topic. What's that? Not ironic enough? Too bad, don't care.
Holy crap, we're starting this off horribly. To put it simply, this movie sucks so much shadow balls that all this movie does is spit up shit. This movie has so many problems with it, I don't know where to start. How about the villain? Well, after some feedback on the top 5 Pokemon generations, I have taken back my claim on Kodai being a ripoff of Lelouch, as I no longer feel that way about Kodai. Truth is, when I first saw the movie, I was just making jokes about Kodai being a Lelouch wannabe, but I never meant that, and I do apologize for it. However, and this is a big however, there are still a lot of bones I have to pick with Kodai. Just because he's not a ripoff of Lelouch doesn't mean he doesn't suck. That's this movie's second biggest problem. The villain sucks. Kodai's main goal in the film was to collect the energy Celebi used to time travel again, as his psychic powers were expiring. I wouldn't mention this as Kodai's goals, as he wants to expand his business with his future sight abilities. Except two things. One, how does touching a time portal cause the destruction of nature around it? I understand Celebi has the power of restoring plants and traveling through time. However, that just means Celebi can revive dead stuff. Unless you're telling me that everything, and I do mean everything, dies from Celebi's portal, then that is retarded and that makes no sense.
The Time Ripple is said to collect energy for Celebi, a time traveler who restores plant life, to use. When Kodai tampered with the Time Ripple, he reversed the flow of time. Essentially, Celebi's powers. The rest really just requires basic math. Now, can you do basic math?
And two, if this is because of time, aren't they forgetting a certain legendary of time? You know, a Pokemon that could save this area?
Why should a deity that can manipulate time have to deal with the events involving a guy who can see into the future and a time-traveling forest sprite? It's not like Kodai actively sought out Dialga or posed a threat to its existence. So why would Dialga need to care? Plus, the events of the movie resolved without Dialga, further contributing to the idea that it's still not needed. Coming from someone who would list Dialga as one of their favorite Pokemon of all time, as opposed to you, who put it smack dab at the bottom of his top 49 legendary Pokemon list, Dialga would have just been unnecessary.
The characters are also one-dimensional, like their anime counterparts. Not one character goes through any development, at least not the newer ones, and they have no reason to be there. Speaking of new characters, they are just bland or okay. I didn't like Rowena because she's a generic turn against the villain character, and her hairstyle just screams Leia wannabe.
Over-exaggerated pigtails in anime? What sorcery is this?
Zoroark was a decent character, as at least he had a goal.
Couldn't you argue that every named character in this movie had a goal?
Zoroark, let's talk about Mima, the somewhat main character of this film. I honestly find Zoroark to be one of this film's saving graces. One of the only, mind you. She's powerful, she wants to see her son, which unlike others is a goal, and she actually sacrifices herself to save her son.
Yeah, that whole one-dimensional character thing you mentioned
Okay,
earlier. Yeah,
I
you're
will
sort of
explain
wrecking
what
it
this
up
is.
yourself.
Using actual Pokemon logic here, disregarding Zoroark's electrocution earlier in the film, as well as damage inflicted, let me ask you this. What is Shadow Ball? A ghost move. Well, I can imagine that ghost types must be super effective on Zoroark. Are you kidding? Ghost is resistant of Zoroark. There is no way Zoroark could have died.
Pokemon Battling 101. If a move can deal 1 hit point against a Pokemon, then that move can KO that Pokemon. Sure, Zoroark resists Shadow Ball, but it is not immune to it. And besides, it's not like it went from 100% to 0 health. Did you not see the hell Zoroark went through? But do you know what completely kills your argument, Wave? The fact that it wasn't even Shadow Ball that did Zoroark in. The best part is, you showed us what killed Zoroark. It's lethal, powerful, and just so we're clear, not resisted by dark.
And that's just how I feel overall about this film. It pisses me off. The story was stupid, and it overall was a mess of a film. I don't want to talk about this movie ever again.
I'm gonna hold you to that.
Move on. Oh, and did I forget to mention that this movie was supposed to have a dark Ash in it? Why wasn't it in the movie?
Trailers for the third movie had Mewtwo in them. Trailers for the seventh movie had Ash riding a Rayquaza. Trailers for the 10th movie involved Ash and a Pidgeot, possibly his Pidgeot. The point is, they always have trailers for the Pokemon movies with scenes that don't make it into the final cut. The Zoroark movie is nothing special in this regard. And if you really want to be technical, we had a Dark Ash in one of the episodes of Pokemon, and we did have Zora transforming into Ash for a minute. So it's not like we didn't have a copy of Ash in the movie.
Come out, Virginia, don't let me wait. You Catholic girls start much too late.
This doesn't get better for a bit, so please bear with me.
One world, now and forever, best friends, loyal and true. You and me and Pokemon.
To be fair, this movie doesn't piss me off in the same way the previously mentioned movie did.
Well,
But
that
it still
took
sucks.
all of 40
Pokemon
seconds.
Heroes takes the gang to Italy, aka Alto Mare, where they discover a plot by the villains to take the Soldi from Alto Mare and take over the world. Big surprise. The plot itself doesn't piss me off. It's some of the execution, though. Like, why capture Latios when you had a better chance with Latios? And before you say, convenience! Why didn't they go for Latios after capturing them?
Did we forget about the part where Latios jumped in front of Latias to prevent Latias from being captured from Annie and Oakley? Or how about the fact that the DMA that think Annie and Oakley were trying to activate in the first place only required one of the Eon twins and the Soldu to activate?
I mean, hell, even when Latios is right there in the Soul Room. they don't
What was
capture them
that?
for more power.
The villains were
Seems to me they were
incapacitated
trying to
and
make
unable
Latios
to capture
useful as
Latias at that
compensation for
moment?
not being in much of the movie.
Context? What the fuck is that?
What is up with the romance between Ash and Latias? I don't mean friendship, I mean... that.
So Latias had a crush on Ash. So what? It wasn't like it was a sexual lust for Ash. No, it was as innocent of a crush as one could get. And that kiss at the end? It's quite possible that kiss was just a goodbye kiss, as when that kiss happened, Ash was just about to leave Altomare. This is, of course, assuming that Latias kissed him at the end, and not the girl that Latias disguised herself as.
How does Safeguard destroy the control panel when that makes 0 sense? I also don't like some of the characters. Oh, sure, the animation is good, but the characters aren't that great. Though, to be fair, they have more personality than that other movie mentioned before.
Just so we're clear, we're still never talking about that movie again, right?
Misty, Brock, and the villains aren't too special, though the Aeon duo is a nice touch. As for the music, I kinda liked it, though a lot of the music from the dub is used, mainly the opening. But in terms of later entries on this list, it's just decent. And the voice acting is just okay. Not too special, but yeah. Oh, and I mentioned it here and not in the last entry. Because I don't
Okay, I thought we were done talking about the Zoroark movie. Why are you still referencing it?
To remove the
Fucking
elephant
liar.
in the room and to deal with this entry as best I can, I will talk about the 4-Kids dub version. Whatever. This dub cut out a lot of important scenes like the history of Alto Mare, which was removed in the dub, and replaced with some half-assed evil trainer bullshit. What the? Stupid copyright.
But you uploaded this to Blib, which wouldn't have the copyright issue, and you were talking about the plot, so it's not like there'd be any copyright issue about that. And why was Hades dead? I think my brain just died.
Also, why the Tartarus do most DVD copies have that blue tint on them? What, did the Navis invade this town or something?
Water absorbs every color of the color spectrum except for blue, which means it reflects blue onto other objects, with some objects being more absorbent of the color than others. Obnoxious as it may be, there's actually logic behind it. Something your points seem to lack.
Why replace Latios' voice for Latias' voice? He's a male Pokemon for Caden's sake. So you're telling me that he got a sex change or something? Because that makes no sense considering, legendaries.
Latios and Latias are very similar Pokemon, so for them to have very similar sounding noises really shouldn't come as a surprise. Plus, the movie makes it clear when one is speaking and one is not, and Latios' speak is one octave lower than Latias's. Besides, should it really matter anyways? It's not like they're actually speaking with words, they're speaking through their noises, whatever. The rest of this is just his final thoughts on the movie, so I think I can skip to number 13.
Sooner or later it comes down to fate. I might as well be the one.
Why is it that some of the 4th gen movies have to piss me off?
Because
I
you
love
take
4th gen.
relatively harmless, kid-friendly anime movies a little bit too seriously for your own good.
To prevent repetition, I will make this quick. This movie sucked, I didn't like this and that. The end.
I wish.
Okay, now that that's out of the way. The problems with the film is that the villain was just complete shit. Like they're not even trying with these villain designs anymore. His goal is to take over the distortion world. Hey, original!
Okay, I get that you're trying to work on your abridged Tristan Taylor voice. I mean, you gotta have some variety in your Pokemon sprite thing. But originality's not everything, you know? I'm not gonna say that originality's not a good thing when it's done right, or that it's a bad thing when it's done wrong. The problem is, you don't say if it's done right or wrong, you just say it's unoriginal.
I think one of this film's weakest points are the legendaries themselves. Giratina doesn't do anything but linger around.
Even though the film tells us that this is more or less a result of Dialga interfering with its ability to cross dimensions. So when it actually does something more than linger, it actually makes the scene more tense and exciting.
Regigigas doesn't appear until the last few minutes of the film, which really pisses me off, because he comes right out of nowhere.
So the iceberg crashing down in front of the temple where Regigigas was sleeping due to the actions of the villain means it came out of nowhere. Granted, it seems more like coincidence than anything, but I wouldn't say it's out of nowhere.
But then there's Shaman, which is one of the reasons I hated this film. Shaman is so goddamn annoying. It never shuts up, it annoys the protagonist, and it is so goddamn weak.
While I can actually see Shaman being annoying to you, 2 things. 1, the only protagonist that was constantly annoyed by Shaman's antics was Ash. Everyone else seemed to be just fine with it. And number 2, Shaman wasn't weak, as much as it was timid and afraid to fight, at least while in land form. And if you still want to continue to think that way, let me bring this up. Shaman's main opponents throughout the movie were generally bulky Pokemon who resisted grass. If anything, Shaman's only weak by comparison.
So what other problems does Captain Planet's Geopet have, you may ask?
Because
Well, that's roughly it. Shaman's an annoying character that has no redeemable personality. But there is one good thing that came out of this. Banyo beat it in box office records.
totally relevant to the topic, right guys?
You want to know the villain's name? It's Zero. You know what? Screw it, I quit. Let's just move on.
I'm sorry, but wouldn't it have been more fitting to talk about Zero's name back when we were, talking about Zero? There are many reviews of the Pokemon movies would still suck, but at least I wouldn't have to complain about a lack of organization. I'm just gonna go ahead and skip number 12, because he brings up nothing negative about it. This wouldn't be an issue if not for the fact that A, he just spent the past 3 entries criticizing each of the films, B, he thought each of the entries from number 11 to number 1 were perfect or near perfect to justify it being in number 12, or C, he criticized the movie. Just for the record, this is what he liked from that movie. Okay, you're caught up. Now we're skipping to number 11.
I'm gonna be frank with you all. The first Pokemon movie is one of the most bland, unappealing, and in a way, overrated films, in my opinion. It's enough to make the top 11, but that's it. And yes, I understand that I liked the third movie because it had Dan Green in it.
Are we completely forgetting about
What?
these?
Frankly, I didn't like it as much. I liked the first movie because of nostalgia.
So a movie that you described as bland, unappealing, and overrated is above a film that you thought was pretty good because of nostalgia? I'm sorry, but that doesn't work. If a movie has to be from your childhood in order for you to enjoy it still, then it's really not that great of a movie to begin with. I can understand you not hating the film due to nostalgia, but you should be able to judge the movie not based on when you experienced it, but on its own merits.
I understand this film has morals. Senseless fighting inspires more fighting. But the problem is that the moral is completely rendered pointless in a world involving Pokemon fighting. That's why I haven't talked about the morals in this list yet, or on this list, whatever. This is one of the only few Pokemon movies to have a moral in it, and it's not that good due to the world around this moral.
Not really, since Pokemon fighting in that world is much akin to wrestling and boxing in our world. It's just sport. Now, if you really want something that fucks over the moral, it's the fact that Mewtwo erases everyone's mind at the end of the film. I mean, what good is a moral if we're not allowed to remember it? Also, the fuck are you going about saying the other films didn't have morals? I could find them. You have the power to make dreams a reality. Good cannot exist without evil. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And my personal favorite, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned.
I also didn't care that much for the characters in this film, except Ash and his gang and Mewtwo. The rest of the characters are bland, unfunny, and worthless to the plot for the most part. And Mew is one of the worst examples of this. Mew doesn't do anything to the overall story other than making Mewtwo and fighting him during the climax of the movie. I'm sure he must have done something in the manga version of this or in the Japanese version, but I'm covering the dub version in this. Now, Mew's just worthless.
Now, I want to focus on this sentence for a minute. You leave these comments all throughout your video, and when I see comments like this, all I can think of is just this giant neon sign saying, "Look at me, look at how different my opinion is." You can have your opinions, but there's being nonconformist, and then there's being pretentious.
Let's move on to the positive aspects, if I can find those. The animation is nice, with the towns, the environments, and the Pokemon look nice with their anime counterparts, like when comparing them to the anime, I mean. The music is somewhat memorable, and the fighting was pretty cool, though. I didn't like the final battle, though, between the clones, as I felt it dragged on for a little long, including Mew and Mewtwo. And I also can't help but complain about several story aspects removed from the film, such as the flashback of Mewtwo, where it's established why he wants to destroy humanity. But that's irrelevant since we got his backstory years later.
Hey, remember when 4Kids cut out that opening from Pokemon Heroes? Well, we technically got it later, so that should be irrelevant. Oh wait, you didn't discount that. And yet you're not discounting this. What the fuck, Wave? Yeah, I'm gonna skip the rest of this segment. Literally, the one positive aspect that I'm going to skip is him describing Mewtwo. And even then, he only talks about the design, which the movie is not to really be praised for since it was created before the movie, and the voice, which is pretty much the same thing you praised Entei for Spell of the Unknown. Ultimately, I'm not convinced that the first movie is better than Spell of the Unknown. Then again, when you spend over half the segment being negative, and the one positive that sticks out is the music, when compared to the previous segment, which also had the villain and the plot, you're not really convincing anyone.
In all seriousness, though, Destiny Deoxys was a pretty good movie to watch. In a generation that was meh. I like some of the characters of the film, such as Tori, as they play a main part in this film.
So in short, I like this character because he's plot relevant.
As for the story, I find it to be decent. Well, it has Rayquaza in it, who I don't like that much. It does have Deoxys in it, and that's what puts it above the third movie. Unlike Mystery of the Unknown, I love Deoxys!
Now by that, do you mean Rayquaza as it was portrayed in the movie or Rayquaza in general? If the former, a little more specification wouldn't hurt. If it was the latter, you made a top 49 legendary Pokemon list, and you put Rayquaza at number 20. I'm drawing two conclusions from this. A, your opinion has drastically changed since, or B, you have a really low opinion of the other 29 Pokemon below Rayquaza. Apart from poor jokes, I can't find anything else left to talk about in this section. We're skipping to number 9.
Sometimes it's hard to know which way you're supposed to go.
What can I honestly say about this movie? It's better than the Giratina movie, and miles better than the Zoroark movie, but it's not that memorable. Believe me, there's a few more Senna movies I have on this list that are better. The movie involves the Dialga, Palkia, and Giratinas from the previous movies fighting Arceus, as Ash and the others are sent back in time to give the Jewel of Life back to Arceus, as it contains 3 of Arceus' plates that he used to build Damon's village so that it doesn't die.
Even though you show more than 3 being used to create the Jewel of Light, are you even reviewing the footage you're using for this segment?
It's not too bad, but there are a few plot holes in the event of time travel. For example, how does Ash stopping the events in the past not change the events of the future? The only thing that really changed was Arceus knowing who Ash is. Or, how does hypnosis control someone when it's supposed to put them to sleep? That's Psychic's job. Congrats, movie. The plot hole is so big you can see China on the other side.
Well, when Bronzong used hypnosis, their pupils disappeared, so it could be assumed that they were put under a trance. Now, for the sake of argument, let's pretend that he was using psychic instead of hypnosis. Guess what a psychic type with access to TMs can learn? Yeah, plot hole my ass.
The characters are decent. I really do like Damon and the others as well, though characters like Arceus are just annoying to listen to. And characters like Marcus are just bland villains. Like, they're so bland, I'm surprised he wasn't in Gen 1.
Marcus, believe it or not, wanted the land to grow and thought if Arceus took back the Jewel of Life, that the land would die and revert to what it once was. Yeah, he's pretty obvious, but I wouldn't necessarily say he's bland. Or at least not as bland as you're making him out to be.
So yeah, the characters in this are just okay, or decent, or not okay.
Sounds
Now,
like you
to
are
the
having a
animation.
little bit of
The
problem
animation in the
there.
film is
Was
good.
that you
I like the
fumbling over
animation
your own
style used in
script,
Machinist
or you being
and
indecisive?
especially since
In
the
either
previous
case,
film was based on the
re-recording
Greece,
later
and the
is
style
never an option that you
as
should
well was welcome.
discount.
As for the music, it's pretty decent, but I can't remember any famous tracks from the film, minus the dub themes.
Because we always have to try too hard to make it sound like 4Kids is the devil. Wait. 4Kids didn't dub this. So why are we making all of these comments saying how 4Kids is evil when the other dub is just as detestable?
I don't have anything to frankly say about this movie. When it comes to the remaining Sinnoh movies, I can just find more reasons to like them over this one. I'm sorry, I just don't like this movie enough to make it any higher. There are a few more Sinnoh movies less so.
Still going by the rule that most people follow, there's technically only one left, The Rise of Darkrai, which is ironically number 8 on this list. Also, remember how I complained about how he said nothing negative about the Entei movie? Yeah, similar story here, skipping to number 7.
Gotta get back in time.
What to say about this movie? Being the movie that introduced me to Gen 2, of course this would have had some nostalgic memories with me. The storyline was pretty interesting, having legendaries nearly destroy the world, and I also like the setting of a tropical resort for something as violent as Pokemon. Kinda ironic, actually. And yes, Lawrence III has a stupid goal of just collecting the legendary burrs to add to his collection, but at least it's better than taking over the world like every other bland villain in these movies.
You called Marcus bland earlier. He didn't try and take over the world. But more to the point, is it really any better to have a stupid idea than a bland idea? If anything, being stupid is worse than being bland. If you're bland, it just means you're not going to be very popular because you have no standout feature. If you're stupid, you're going to have a standout feature that makes you popular, but for all the wrong reasons. And let's be honest here. Do you see more hate for something that's bland or something that's stupid? Spoilers, it's the latter.
As for the characters, they are hilarious.
Which is why when you say hilarious, you show a character without a funny bone in its body.
This movie has its issues, like the 4Kids dub, and the stupid dialogue they sometimes say, and the fact that Lapras can't learn fly.
Wave, there's no other way for me to tell you this. That was a terrible joke. To get the context of the joke, which would be the only reason why we would laugh in the first place, this guy said in his review of Pokemon Black 2 and White 2, "My Tappet can't learn fly," in a similar manner to that. However, Logan made it pretty clear that when he said that, that was something that didn't negatively affect Black 2 and White 2. With how you grouped it with the quote-unquote negative aspects of the film, you make it sound like Lapras not learning fly is a bad thing for the film. Oh, and the joke was forced anyway, so it's not like it was going to be funny in the first place.
The Victini movie is an interesting case for me, since I was given two choices. Ultimately, I chose the Zekrom movie, because Zekrom is better than Reshiram.
It's nice to see you try and do a Stitch impersonation, but why should we be jealous of an opinion? And it's not like you have a nonconformist opinion either. You like one really popular, really well-liked legendary over another. So what?
But all that really changes is the shiny of the film, the secondary legend, and a couple Pokemon. Aside from that, it's the same film.
Further proving why
still
we shouldn't
good.
be
As I
jealous.
said in the top 5 Pokemon generations list, this movie fixed a lot of problems the Zoroark movie had. And now you get to hear what I feel they fixed on. First off, the villain isn't a generic piece of shit. Second of all, the The characters have more development this time around as they interact with the town of Iondac, 5x I misspelled that, which is based off of France.
Call me late to this because I'm bringing it up only now, but whenever a particular location in any of the Pokemon movies is based off a place in real life, you're quick to point it out. Yet, when the Shaman movie is based off of Norway, and when the Zoroark movie is based off the Netherlands, you don't care to bring him up at all. Just because we poke at the fact that Kingdom Masters is Dutch all the time, doesn't mean you have to disregard the fact that one of the movies is based off where he lives.
As the story progresses, it turns out Damon's, the villain's, goal is to restore his old village of the Vale using the Sword of the Vale, as it was destroyed years ago due to two princes fighting each other with the Yin-Yang dragons. Speaking of which, Damon is more of a sympathetic villain than Kodai was. He didn't want to expand his empire or anything. He wanted to bring his people back to where they originally were, and it's only until the end of the film that he realizes that he doesn't need the sword to rebuild his people's land. Instead, his clan can help him. Damon's not a bad person. He just didn't know what to do at the time, and he thought that the Dragon Force, shut up obvious joke, would repair the land. He never intended this to happen. Hence why I like him over Kodai, as well as other reasons.
Isn't that kind of the point? Damon's supposed to be a more likable character, because unlike Kodai, Damon's intentions are good. What you're supposed to be arguing here is how Damon's a better character, which you aren't doing. How could one man state the obvious, yet completely miss the point?
Also, the animation is really nice as compared to movie 13, with the backgrounds and the CG being really well done for this movie, though I have to ask, what is wrong with Iris's hair? What, did a striker merge with it or something? But the one trump card in this movie is Victini. Unlike Zoroark, which is kind of hard to get an emotion on.
Anger, pain, fear, tired. Zoroark is not just a one-face-fits-all type of Pokemon. Either through its body movements or its facial expressions, it clearly showed a lot of emotion during that movie. If somehow Zoroark's face still doesn't give you any emotions to read, then please, learn to read body language.
Or Zoroark was annoying somewhat.
So wait,
Victini is
Zoroark
both
went from
hilarious
being
and fun to
decent
watch.
to being annoying.
She makes a promise with Ash to go to the
Why
sea,
the sudden
and that
change?
happens.
I know you hate
But I
Zoroark,
think
but
what I love about Victini
you already
is
said that.
she is
No going
hilarious.
back
While
now.
watching the film, whenever Victini did something funny, I was laughing my ass off. That never gets old. I also found the characters to be really interesting as well, especially Silent, unlike that other movie.
All you've been doing throughout this entire segment is going, this movie is better than the movie that came before, and here's why. I understand that you think the Victini movie is better, and I understand the sequels are supposed to improve upon the original, but the Victini movie is not really a direct sequel to the Zoroark film. If anything, the only sequels in this entire thing are the Shaman movie and the Arceus movie, being sequels to the Darkrai and Shaman films respectively. And I also wouldn't mind if you did it for any other film, like going, the Arceus movie is better than the Giratina movie, and here's why, or the Lugia movie is better than the Mewtwo movie, and here's why. We get it, you hate the Zoroark film, that's fine. However, the amount of double standards you have against it, it's just simply astounding. It's literally larger than that time you complain about Ruby and Sapphire's battery dying out and losing all time-based events, and not complaining about Gen 2's battery dying out and losing all of your saved data. Yeah, we're just going to skip the rest of this and number 5. There's nothing really new to complain about.
That's right, folks. My favorite movie from Gen 2 is only number 4 on this list. After the disaster known as Top 5 Pokemon Generations, and after the reception, I thought about it. And while I still think this movie is good, it has a lot of problems to it, and if I were to redo the list, Gen 2 would be number 2 and Gen 4 would be number 1. But aside from that, I still like this movie, enough to be at the spot. I like the storyline of the film, and though it has plot holes, no movie is perfect. One of the reasons I like it is because it mainly involves Celebi, my second favorite legendary from Johto, and Suicune, my favorite legendary of Gen 2.
Just like.
And this movie is what made me love them. Yes, these movies make me like most of the legendaries. Funny how that works, doesn't it? Anyway, stating the obvious aside, another reason I like this story is because it's not afraid to have its dark moments in it. Like the villain partially winning at the climax and Celebi nearly dying.
Let's look at 15th, 14th, and 13th for a second, okay? Let's see here. Zero absorbs Giratina's energy and goes into the reverse world. Partial victory. Annie and Oakley capture Latios, grab the Sildu, and take control of the DMA. Partial victory. Kodai forcing everybody out of the city by having Zoroark use his illusionary powers to terrorize the townspeople by creating illusions of Entei, Raikou, and Suicune. Partial fucking victory. Though in reality, any of these partial victories are only means to an end. Iron Mask Marauder's case included. As for your other claim, hey, remember when Giratina almost died? Or when Zoroark almost died? Or when Latios did die? If that's all you have to say for Pokemon Forever being dark, then why aren't they praised for being dark as well?
I also like the characters in this film, including the Masked Marauder, since he is a part of Team Rocket, one of my favorite evil teams, and he's voiced by Dan Green! Plus, his goal mainly is to take over Team Rocket, which is more original than destroying the freaking planet, but I digress.
He's trying to take over a powerful organization. Maybe you're more familiar with this if it was taking over a city, a country, or even the world. Regardless, this type of action has been done before many, many, many times. Maybe you can argue that it's more original because it's an evil organization rather than a good organization. But the fact still remains. It's not as original as you think it is.
The other characters were okay. I like Sam, I like Ash, and I like Celebi, but they don't have as many interesting traits in this film. Another problem is the friggin' robot at the climax. Look, I know this was early CG, but that looks like Black 2's level of shit in CGI. Same has to be said for the music. I don't hate it, and there are a few good pieces, but there are a few I also don't like the opening and ending songs. Freaking dub.
You know, that reminds me. Why don't you ever talk about any of the tracks that you like or don't like? I mean, you praise certain soundtracks and you diminish the dub themes in many others, but the only time you actually mention any individual tracks are during the Rise of Darkrai segment. Also, you guys are okay with me skipping him covering nostalgia and animation, right? Okay, thanks. Does anyone else find it ironic that his top 3 Pokemon movies are generally considered to be Generation 3 movies? Hell, even with his own logic, Gen 3 contains his favorite non-Gen 4 movie.
I gotta admit, this film is not as amazing as I remember it to be originally. You know, like last entry. But it was still fun to see. This film has a good story, involving the main legendary Jirachi waking up after 1,000 years and wanting to have fun. Well, the villain of the film wants to use Jirachi's power to create a fake Groudon.
Now, if I remember correctly, he actually wanted to create a real Groudon. He just
like a real Groudon,
couldn't.
not a tentacle raping one. Moving on. I like the story because it's more of a magical themed movie instead of themes from previous films, which makes it unique. I also really like Jirachi and Max's friendship throughout the film, as it leads to some very funny scenes, which make me laugh. That's right, the negative MC has a spot in his heart for comedy scenes in Pokemon. Come at me. As for the other characters, I like Butler as he's not directly evil. He just wants to get revenge on Team Magma for his failure at reviving Groudon, but he realizes in the end that his method of going through it was wrong and that He and his girlfriend Diana stay behind to protect the Pokemon of this area. And look, actual development in a Pokemon movie. Where is this concept movie 13?
I only heard development. Plot development counts. Wording your words correctly. Where is this concept, Wave?
In all seriousness, though, I like the relationship between both Butler and Diana, as they both are a perfect match for one another, as well as being childhood friends. As for the other characters, I find them to be decent enough, though this film seems to focus on May and Max rather than the whole gang. Since May is focused on having her wish granted via an ornament she got earlier in the film, while Max is busy having fun with Jirachi.
Took you long enough. A recurring problem with your list is that whenever you talked about Ash and Company, you never really described them other than bland or decent or good. You just left it at that. Here, you're finally explaining what characters have in terms of development in the movie. I've been waiting 12 fucking segments for this? Side note, May's focus is just a setup for a joke at the end of the film. The real focus of this movie is Max and Jirachi.
As for the animation and music, I like both, I really do, as the animation fits the environment of Forina, and I also like the animation done for the characters. And the music is awesome, because it is catchy and memorable. The film is not perfect, however, as the voice acting and even the story, while good, has a couple plot holes in it. Like, why go for Jirachi's power instead of just wishing for a Groudon?
I don't know, why would you want to create something that could potentially destroy you?
But the movie is still good enough to be on this list. Overall, while this film has its issues, I love the friendship between Max and Jirachi, the comedy is great, and the story is really good. While I wouldn't put it in the Hall of Fame, far from that, I would still pop this movie in and enjoy it, even though it's not as good as the last two entries. Here's a formula for you. Good setting, plus decent characters, plus a mother and son relationship, equals... Okay, let me re-edit that formula.
So you mentioned that the Zoroark film has a good setting. Once again, why not bring up the fact that it was based off the Netherlands? And the characters went from bland with a decent character to bland and annoying to decent. Make up your fucking mind, Wave.
Decent/good characters, plus a mother-son relationship, plus a setting based around Roman Greek cities, and gorgeous animation, equals... Yes, I know I'm going to get a lot of hate from the Pokemon fanbase considering how some say that it's irritating, has no plots, and other problems with the film. But I like this film because there are a lot of things I like about it that overshadow the problems for the most part. First off, like I said in the formula segment, the animation is gorgeous. This was the last movie to use hand-drawn cells. The sea is drawn really well, with the Pokemon inside as well as other backgrounds of the film. Though I mentioned the sea, since this film, well, it mainly revolves around the sea, and that's where the main plot takes place. I also like the animation for the characters in Pokemon as well. It looks really good for an anime movie. Speaking of characters, this is what makes the film shine. Not one character isn't involved with the plot, and each have a major part in the film.
Well, I can definitely say that May, Ash, Jack, and the girl were all pretty important characters in the overall plot. And one could argue the grandfather was too, so I'll count him. That leaves Max, Brock, and the girl's parents. Theoretically, you could take those characters out and the movie would remain the same. So bullshit.
Though some argue it's more of a May and Manaphy movie than anything. But then again, Manaphy is in the title. As for why May is considered the main focus, pretty censored.
I have an argument. Max had a movie where he was the focus, so why can't May? You're the one that put the Manaphy movie at number 2, and I'm the one that had to make up that argument. It's rather sad, really.
Though this film has some really unnecessary fan service. Again, not saying this film is perfect, but I might as well mention it. I love Ash's gang in this flick.
even though half of them didn't contribute to the plot at all.
Though I really hate Jack, and I'm glad they made him a partial villain in the manga version. 'Cause he is
So
nothing
you
more
don't
than
bother with the
useless
manga
cheese.
version of Pokemon the
Yes,
first
but
movie,
without
yet
him,
you bother
it
with the
wouldn't be
manga version
good,
of
but he's
Pokemon
not
Ranger in the
good
Temple of the
Batman.
Sea.
Anyways, let's
Nice.
talk about Manaphy. Is it a guy, girl? Yiffit.
Yiffit?
Yiffit.
Okay then. By the way, Lady would like to say something.
Furry.
Thank you, Lady. It's always helpful.
Now where's my damn money?
Mail.
Manaphy is an interesting case, seeing how it can be funny during some scenes, and other scenes it's useful, like at the ending. And unlike Shaman, Manaphy didn't drag on my patience and make me want to throw it across the screen. No, we're not doing that joke.
By referencing the joke,
It's
technically
the
aren't you?
relationship between May and Manaphy. I really liked it. It had both of them grow as characters, at least in this movie, and it was kind of interesting of a situation to watch. The other characters are just okay or decent. Like the villain Phantom is just a decent villain, considering he just wants the crystals to make money.
I'm sorry, but isn't someone who's doing it all for the money just as generic as someone who's trying to take over the world? If you went into any detail about, their characters, then, maybe I would forgive you. But you don't. You usually just go as far as their overall goal.
As for the music, I adore the music in this film. Every piece is awesome to listen to, and not one piece doesn't fit the scene it's in. Bias, maybe, but I love the music. And as for the voice acting, I find it to be just okay. I don't care that much for voice acting in a film unless it's a severe problem. Since this was the first movie dubbed by the Pokemon Company, and no, I do not count the Mastermind special because that was originally dubbed by 4Kids, I find the actors turn in a decent performance. It doesn't cause a problem, but it's not that memorable. Final thoughts. This movie has its problems, yes, but these are problems I can overlook because I like everything else about this film. Animation is top-notch, the music is beautiful, the story is awesome, and the ending left me a little sad. My suggestion is ignore the critics on this one and judge for yourself, like a normal human being should.
Quick question, Wave.
And see what you
Can't
think.
that also apply to this,
Watch this
or
movie yourself and
this,
decide whether or not
or
it's
this,
And if you think it
or
sucks,
even
move on.
these?
I'm not here to change anyone's minds, but state my unbiased opinion on these films.
Even though you said this not even a minute ago.
As for music, I adore the music of this film. Every piece is awesome to listen to, and not one piece doesn't fit the scenes in. Bias, maybe, but I love music. Bias, maybe, but I love music. Bias, maybe, bias.
Holy shit, you can't even keep consistent for an entire minute!
If you've seen all these movies, then you know what my number one is.
Hey, do you remember how you were complaining about 4Kids dubbing some of the movies earlier? You know what completely destroys that argument? Playing a movie that they dubbed at number 1.
This awesome movie is my favorite on this list. Like, nah, really? But it's true for me. While it lacks some of the things the Manaphy movie did that made it good, this movie makes up for that in spades, and I could think even more than that. Is it overrated? Yes.
Overrated is usually applied to something that has garnered too much unwarranted attention. You put the fan favorite film at number 1. Please, for the love of God, tell me you've passed math class.
I love this animation. While it's not as gorgeous as the previous entry, I love the animation of this movie, a Snorlax.
Did I hear that right? Did he just say a Snorlax? That makes no sense. It doesn't relate to any... My digest brained.
I love the backgrounds of the film, I love the drawings of the characters, and the environments look amazing. Once again, commenting why I love hand-drawn animation. See what I did there? I also love the music of this film. It's so memorable to listen to, and it has a wide variety of musical instruments used, which I love. I really like the characters as well, as they all play a major part of the film. And I also like the chemistry with some of the characters like Ash and Lucario, and how they develop with this chemistry. For example, Lucario is an asshole at the beginning of the film, believing he can do anything and having a hatred towards Sir Aaron because he sealed him away at the start of the film. But at the end, he realizes the truth and that he was sealed so that he wouldn't follow Sir Aaron as he sacrificed himself to protect the Tree of Life. That's really touching, and that is a good example of character development IMO. I can't really think of a character that I hate in this film. They were done really well, including Mew. So cute.
Cute as a fetus.
This film does have its issues. As I've said before, no movie is perfect. A couple filler scenes as an example. Seriously, what reason was there for a hot spring scene?
So your top 2 Pokemon movies are the Pokemon movies where you acknowledge that they have fan service. Just saying.
Some of the parts after Lucario comes out drag on for too long, and honestly, I didn't care that much for Lucario until the end of the film, even after rewatching this film multiple times. But these flaws, while they're minor when compared to how much I enjoyed this movie, they are minor, and I couldn't care about them when compared to everything else about this film. Plus, another reason I like this is because I got into this movie because of Shinyco suggesting it to me.
And here I thought your arguments couldn't get weaker. Seriously, because your girlfriend suggested it to you? You bringing it up makes me think that you probably would have had it lower, but then your girlfriend stepped in and was like, oh, I love the Lucario movie, and then bam, number 1. You know what? I'm done. The rest of this video is just the final thoughts. I'm done with this commentary. I felt that your jokes were not funny. I thought your editing was sloppy at times. And your points? Did you not watch the commentary? Final thoughts? These 2 are currently my favorite Pokemon movies.
But even if I agreed, this list would still be shit.
Ah, memories.